An evening of astrology with Reverend Dr. Dikki-jo Mullen at the meeting of the North Florida Astrological Association. In this presentation, Reverend Dr. Mullen discusses the 5 stages of grief as they are associated with astrology, noting the stages and the planet ruling each stage. Then she explores the many levels of meaning associated with the solar eclipse of April 30th, 2022, and the lunar eclipse of May 16th, 2022.
Well, everybody, there's a peak of sunspot activity now. I don't know if you've received that information, but the sun is blowing its top. There are all sorts of solar flare emissions, and there are sunspots that are very active. And sunspot activity, most people feel that Galileo discovered sunspots with the invention of the telescope, but actually in much earlier times, thousands of years before, and this amazes me, the sun was more visible, and astronomers and astrologers of ancient times would observe the periodic sunspot cycles, and they relate to strange weather and extremes of events and human behavior. So I really think the sunspot activity is responsible in part with some of the other aspects going on for the times we have in the world. And of course, as astrologers, we always want to know how to chart and understand things. I've been doing some original research and charting sunspots, and the only way that I can find that we can read them in a natal chart is to look at the natal sun. And so during the next few weeks, and think back on the last month or so, look at your natal sun. And of course, for our new listeners, that's the only part of the chart most people know. So look at the house that's in your natal chart and the natal aspects to it, and see if they seem to be kind of supercharged or fired by the sunspot activity. I have felt that they have been in my own chart and in others. For example, I have a Sun-Mars-Uranus conjunction, and the sunspot activity hitting it has created quite a bit of activity that would be apropos to that. It's in my 10th house, and see, it's even acting up tonight to create a disturbance for the meeting. I'd like to just suggest to everybody that that's kind of a neat little thing to look at as far as, how when the sunspot activity peaks, you can make it more personal than you might otherwise be able to do that. So, I'm kind of thinking that it just would be a nice original research project, because sunspot activity is very extreme. If we look at the political climate in the world, and if we look at just the weather and economy and everything else, it's correlating exactly with this peak in sunspot activity. I have noticed in being a consulting astrologer that I'm doing much more grief counseling than usual. When we think of grief counseling, we think of course, losing a loved one, but grief counseling can also go with losing a job or losing a relationship. There are many different types of grief. And I was studying the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross material, about grief, and relating it to the personal planets. And so that's the first screen that I wanted to share with you tonight. Let's see, we can do this. There is the PowerPoint that I prepared for you. And here is a list of the 5 stages of grief. Also, there is kind of an adjunct sort of a situation with this that talks about the 5 stages or 4 stages of betrayal. Betrayal, say, if you trust a coworker and that person knifes you in the back, or we think of a relationship betrayal or family betrayal, that goes through stages that kind of mirror the grief. And if you look at these placements, both in your natal chart and by transits, you can really see how this is going to mirror what's going on around you and maybe understand it. The first stage of grief or betrayal is denial. And I went with the moon with that, and secondarily with Neptune. Neptune, of course, is illusion, confusion. The moon is the subconscious. The bright light of the sun isn't out when the moon is out. And so when you're denying that someone has really died or denying that there's really been a betrayal, and you realize that this is what's going on in your life, look at your natal moon and at the moon by transit, and that'll help you to get a handle on this and understand it. The second stage has to do with anger. One of the men that I was counseling this week, a very nice guy, in fact, he's got an advanced degree. I think it's a law degree, but don't hold that against him. Nice person anyway. Said that he stopped at a 7-Eleven to get gas, and he got mad at the clerk in the 7-Eleven, and was so embarrassed, but was just furious at this poor little lady who was clerking at the 7-Eleven. And it was something to do with the gas or which tank number was pushed, something silly like that. And Mars, the energy planet, was very strong in this guy's natal chart and also by transit. So if you find yourself getting angry at little things, starting road rage confrontations on I-4, whatever you might be doing. I know none of you would do that, especially not you, Colin. No, okay. But if you just feel anger at little things, like if the mailman is late, or whatever, look at Mars and see if there's grief that you've gone through, and then if you're reacting with inordinate anger, and then working through that, analyzing that will help you. The third stage of grief is bargaining, like let everything turn out well, and I promise I'll stop being a bad person, or I promise I'll give all of my money to cat rescues, or whatever. You try to bargain away the stages of grief. This would be Mercury, of course, the great bargainer, the talkative planet, and then Venus. Venus has a lot to do with compromises, as the ruler of Libra, the sign that we relate to as compromise and justice usually. So if you feel the urge to give a bargain with God, if there's grief, let the person that I know is dying of a terrible disease live, and I'll do such and such. If your grief is not completely manifested, but someone has had a fatal diagnosis, the planets Mercury and Venus will help you. And then when that doesn't work, the next stage is depression. Grief in general is ruled by Saturn in the 12th house, according to the Rex Bill's rulership book. But depression follows, say, like the loss of a loved one or a pet, a beloved pet. I often feel worse when an animal dies than a person, because animals are such innocent souls, And I like to tell a bad joke to myself that most people deserve most of what they get, but animals don't. At any rate, if you're depressed over a betrayal or over grief, look at your natal Saturn, the higher interpretation of an aspect or house position of the Saturn. That will be very helpful. And then finally, there's resolution and acceptance. Sometimes after someone has lost a parent or gotten out of the bad relationship, when they've gone through the stages of the death of that phase of life, there'll be like kind of a breakthrough, a creative breakthrough, and a major turn for the better. I've seen this happen helping a lot of people through divorces. Those of you who do counseling will know that's a popular reason that people come to see us. Maybe that's why I refuse to get married to anybody, just you just see too much being a reader. And so dealing with the depression of the whole loss of a loved one, the loss of a parent, a pet, or a relationship. And after that, the acceptance, sometimes it's like emerging from out behind a cloud, and people do better than ever. someone that loses a family member in an accident, after they accept that, deal with it, and move beyond it, it's kind of like something that's built into people in a resilient way. And of course, the sun, the single most important point in the chart and the most familiar, shows where we shine. And Jupiter, the largest planet, represents healing, expansion, and growth. So that would be the last of the stages in going to acceptance. So I hope that's of interest to everybody. I thought that it was something that might be, and that we might enjoy opening the program with tonight. Well, while everything was getting very crazy out there, I heard you talking about eclipses, and I was so glad because we have two major ones coming up. And I thought it might be interesting to take a look at those, because eclipses are just extremely significant turning points. Eclipses can mark major changes in rulerships, both in countries and families. And also, eclipses are kind of like firecrackers in our personal lives. In ancient times, people thought a great sky monster was eating up the light of the sun or the moon. And we have a partial solar eclipse on April 30th, this Saturday at 4:28 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, of the black moon. Here's the chart for it set up for Jacksonville. And for everybody who's listening from different parts of the country, it'll be somewhat similar, but it's just very interesting to note what this black moon eclipse is. It's the second new moon within a single month. Everyone's heard of the blue moon, right? Once in a blue moon, it's about 2.5 to 3 years usually between blue moons. There can be some variables there. It's the same with the black moon. And the blue moon is considered serendipitous and fortunate in most parts of the world. The black moon, I've only found the writer Anne Mora, who's wrote a lot of metaphysical books with a lot of research on the black moon. It's mentioned peripherally in some other books. It's a time when otherworldly activities take place. If you are drawn to the fae folk, the wee ones, the little people, they've been spotted all over the world. Leprechauns, fairies, elves. Many people claim to see them, relate to them. The black moon is a time when they are supposed to be very visible, and we might see evidences of them. The black moon is supposed to be very good for ritual and calling upon and connecting with your spirit guides. Overall, the black moon eclipse adds an extra strong layer to this. The black moon eclipse, as you can see, is where the sun and moon are conjoining here, and they're at 10 degrees Taurus and 28 minutes. And so that's sort of the degree that we want to look at. It's interesting to note that this is on May Day Eve, by the way. Those of you who practice Beltane or the Wheel of the Year, May 1st is a very magical day. And Walpurgisnacht, in Germany, it's St. Walpurgis Night, And Walpurgisnacht is the 30th of April, the night before May Day, and that's a time when there's a lot of supernatural activity, doing of rituals to promote fertility, love, all the things we want, maybe money, power, what kinds of things do we all long for? That sort of activity is also afoot. So I'm looking for this to be a very interesting and very powerful black moon. The Sabian symbol for this black moon reads, a woman sprinkling flowers. It's a time to cultivate art and beauty. And in degrees of the zodiac symbolized, which may have been written by Alan Leo under a nom de plume, it is a man seated on a throne holding a scepter, crowned with wealth and treasures surrounding him, watchfulness and self-service. The British royal family has a lot of activity in their natal charts. Queen Elizabeth, of course, is a Taurus. She just had her birthday. And Prince Charles has the moon in Taurus. And I'm wondering if there might be something going on with the royal family during the time or near the time of this upcoming eclipse. The sun and moon at the eclipse chart are conjunct Uranus, and this is in the Venus-Mercury decadent, the second decadent of Taurus, which is analytical, financial, and earthy. The conjunction with Uranus affects electronics, innovation, its political unrest, surprises, and a very resourceful and kind of a freedom-oriented, exciting eclipse. We have the big alignment going up of planets. Has anyone else gone out in the pre-dawn to see it? I went out this morning, and it's hard here in downtown Orlando to see all the planets. I think I'll drive out in the country tomorrow morning. But this morning I was able to see Venus kind of near the moon, at least going out and looking toward the southeast. But the next few nights, this being right around the last week of April of 2022, we will be able to actually see and look at the alignment of planets. You can see them here on the chart. There's Mars, Neptune, of course, we can't see, but Venus and Jupiter. And then, of course, Saturn down here is also visible. And the moon is very visible. It's good to feel the energies of the planets. If you can meditate under them or look at, say, a transit, if you can see it, if you have just binoculars or just a very modest little telescope, sometimes you can get to planetariums, and there will be some different abilities to look at their fancier telescopes and actually see the celestial energies. It's very, very helpful to do that in order to understand and look at them. Let's take a look at this chart. It's almost a trap chart. There's the north node. A trap chart is when all the placements are between two moon nodes. Here's the moon node at north node at 22 Taurus. South node would be 22 Scorpio. Mercury is just barely outside of that. It'll be retrograding back in soon. But the trap chart indicates that there's a sense of fate at work and free will is limited. And there seems to be more of a need to adapt to the chart rather than to use it as holistically. We like to say it's a roadmap, a tool. Much of the time it is, and I'm a great believer in free will within limits, but not looking at this chart. I think we're going to have to try to work with it and whatever it might bring our way. 4,000 years, maybe longer than that, probably closer to 6,000 years, we astrologers have been watching eclipses, and the bottom line is they always bring what you don't expect, or nearly always do. And this one promises that. Let's take a look at it. Here is the Venus-Jupiter conjunction exact right on the day of the eclipse. That'll be really beautiful to look at if the sky is clear. And there is Neptune there. The Neptune-Jupiter conjunction is the signature aspect of 2022. Every year, there seems to be at least one, maybe more signature aspects. It might have been the Uranus-Saturn square that we're kind of working through yet, that's moving out and last year. Next year, it'll be, of course, Pluto moving into Aquarius for a whole generation. But this year, the Jupiter-Neptune square is there. Neptune is there. I think that this 27th degree of Pisces is really important to look at. It has a strong bearing on creativity, good manners and politeness, spirituality. I think there'll be a lot going on with music and art and entertainment that might be really interesting under this eclipse. Astrologers disagree on how long an eclipse pattern lasts. Some say 3 months, some say 2 years or a year and a half. And I don't know, what do you use, Coleman, for the length of an eclipse?
6 months.
6 months. I use a year.
That's about till the next eclipse, basically.
Till the next eclipse. I use a year if it's hitting in someone's chart hard.
Yeah, if it's strong in their charts, true.
If it's strong and there's a lot of variables, that's kind of a matter of style. But you want to look at anything that's in Pisces, especially near the 27th degree. Many astrologers just use a 3-degree orb for an eclipse, but I tend to use a wider one. But at any rate, this chart of the eclipse is a very interesting one to look at. And it kicks off an exciting 2 weeks. We have a second eclipse coming up. This one will be at the full moon. And the 2-week period from the 30th until May 16th, which is the next full moon, is going to be extremely wild and crazy. Mercury is going to be going retrograde. There it is. And of course, we have Pluto turning retrograde. We've been very blessed earlier this year in that all the planets have been direct, but now they're starting to go retrograde. And by the time the full moon eclipse comes up on the 16th of May, we're going to have Pluto retrograde, Mercury retrograde, and there we have the Scorpio moon and the Taurus sun at 25 degrees. And that's going to give us something of an idea of what we can expect. Well, full moon names are always a good place to start. In earlier times, calendars, the first calendars were done by the full moon, and they were all given names, usually in harmony with the agricultural year. And there's a variety of them. This full moon has been called the hare moon, H-A-R-E as in rabbit, for reproduction. Sometimes the pink moon, sometimes the flower moon, and sometimes the broken snowshoe moon, the frog moon, the budding moon. All of this relates to plants, shrubs, and growth. Moon of the red grass, and the moon when streams are navigable again, the sugar maker moon. These all tie in with parts of the country that are a little further north than we are here in Central Florida, but they still give you an idea of what the ideas are. Geese eggs laying is another name for this full moon. And taking a look at the full moon that's here, there is, it's a bucket chart. If you use those patterns, the handle would be the moon, and then the bottom part of the bucket is over here. And everything is sort of propelled by the moon in Scorpio. The moon in Scorpio relates to finance, investments, insurance, also death and life. And of course, there are a lot of transitions going on of different types and new ways of life coming up. This eclipse has the witches conjunction, the Mars-Neptune conjunction. Grant Louis calls it the lamp of Aladdin, but whenever you see this aspect, Mars conjunct Neptune, there's magical activity afoot. And so we want to use that in a positive and upbeat way. The eclipses in Scorpio and Taurus, I have done a reading for the solar charts. In doing predictions for the different popular magazines, and I have to say I make my living largely, such as it is, by writing for a lot of them, and many of them people think it's compromising astrology. I like to think not. I like to think that instead it's the tip of the iceberg and it helps people to an extent. And I do think that the sun sign astrology has validity. You know, we could probably have a whole meeting just debating about that. We might not be friends anymore, although I would hope so. But I've prepared a sun sign reading for these 2 eclipses. So for those listeners who are Aries and Libra, the eclipses will be affecting your 2nd and your 8th houses. So Aries and Libra listeners, or Aries or Libra rising or ascendant. One eclipse will be one, will be the other. The second house is always interesting. Of course, it's money and income, possessions. The eighth house is investments, inherited money, and also it has a bearing on the afterlife, the spirit world. Taurus, Scorpio, you're really affected by the eclipses. They're in your signs. This is the angular houses of the first and the seventh houses. First house is the self. Seventh house is relationships. And so if you're Taurus or Scorpio, there could be a lot going on with partnerships and also how you see and project yourself, your public image and reputation. You might suddenly dye your hair purple and start wearing yard sale clothes if you usually have been a conservative dresser. And then also you could suddenly change a partnership, business or personal, if you are Taurus or Scorpio. Gemini and Sagittarius listeners, the 12th and the 6th houses are affected by the eclipses. This is going to be health and your own health, the health of others, also mental health, getting organized, schedule of your day, and animal companions, both domestic animals and wild animals. And of course, Sagittarians particularly are very drawn to their animal companions anyway. Capricorn, Cancer. A lot of us are those two signs. I know we've got two Capricorns and at least one Cancer here tonight. We have the 11th and the 5th houses active. The 11th house is long-term hopes and wishes, goals. The 5th house is love, leisure, and creativity. The 11th house is circle of friends. 5th house would be children, romantic connections. Those interests might be strong for those of us on the Cancer and Capricorn interest. Leo and Aquarius, rising sign or sun sign, it's the 10th and the 4th. 4th house is your residence, whether you can pay the rent or not, as high as it's getting. Or in the 10th house is career. So some people might be buying houses or renting a new one, moving, that are heavily Leo and Aquarius. And then also things could be changing in your job or industry. Remember to prepare for the unexpected because eclipses tend to bring what we least expect. The 3rd and the 9th houses are going to be Pisces and Virgo people. And the 3rd and or those rising signs, the 3rd house is neighbors, siblings, and basic transportation. The 9th house is overseas travel, higher education, religious and philosophical, spiritual experiences, the higher mind. So think of the houses and think of where they're affecting your own natal chart. And those of you who've done astrology charts, understand astrology, can look further to see which planets might be affected by the eclipse pattern. A little bit tonight. Let's go back to the event chart here for tonight's meeting. Here's our meeting tonight. April 26th at 7 p.m. We began with Libra rising, and there's a very strong emphasis on this quadrant of the chart from 4 to 8. And we have the sense of being trapped within that quadrant right now. Look at how huge the 5th house is. The little gremlins that are hiding in the computer even had to really expand it way out. That would be things to do with children, leisure time activities, pleasures. And look at this really strong stellium. And here is the Neptune Jupiter conjunction. I'm circling it. Neptune tonight is 24 Pisces. Jupiter is 27. It's moving away from the exact conjunction, which was back on the 12th of April, if I remember right? Wasn't, yeah, the 12th of April. And a lot of things were happening around that time period in the world, if you can think back, but it's still there. And I thought I might go over my 2 cents worth of the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, because this affects us all for the rest of 2022. Even though we passed the peak of it, you know, it's such a strong influence. It comes around in Pisces. Well, the last time was in 1856. And it's especially important because Neptune rules Pisces and Jupiter co-rules Pisces. And every 10 or 12 years, Jupiter and Neptune conjoin, but just not in their own ruling sign. And so it's extremely significant to look at. So this outstanding signature aspect of this year comes around again about every 13 years, but this is unique in that it's in the sign of Pisces. Jupiter has a very strong magnetic field. It's 10 times as strong as the gravity that holds us here on planet Earth, and it can even generate radio waves. Neptune remains in each zodiac sign for about 14 years and takes about 165 years to orbit the sun. Neptune is the most dense of the giant planets, and it's the 3rd most massive. Its energies are also very influential. These two combine, Jupiter representing healing, growth, faith, ritual, and new horizons. Neptune relating to spiritualism. It was discovered when the religion of spiritualism was on the rise. Dreams, illusion, psychology, meditation, also drugs and chemicals. All of those topics are going to be particularly significant. In 1856, when this conjunction last took place in Pisces, Sigmund Freud was born, and the mental health field, of course, would be his major contribution. And also the first commercial oil wells were drilled. Kerosene was first distilled from petroleum. And the civil rights movement simmered, which would lead to the American Civil War. And refugee and immigration situations were developing around the world. And of course, we can see all of this happening now on another level, you know, another curve up the major spiral. But I thought it was so interesting to look at how the planets in 1856 created things that are mirroring what we're dealing with now. And Neptune is often interpreted as a higher octave of the planet Venus. And of course, Venus is exalted in Pisces, Neptune's ruling sign. So I think it's fair to say Neptune is a higher octave of Venus. And this conjunction can operate like the really favorable, more familiar Venus-Jupiter conjunction we have later on this week. So we really want to look at this combination of planets. I think there's going to be an increasing focus on spiritual awakening and paranormal activity. There's a lot of people turning to prayer, different type of rituals, church attendance, if you've noticed, is really peaking. And I think we're looking for answers to cope with things. And of course, the drug crisis and everybody going on and on about the cost of gas. Bored about that. I'm tired of seeing that. But at any rate, it's my Gemini planet, so we get sick of things fast. And so I think that this is going to very much affect this. The fixed star Markab is within 0.5 degree of the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. Markab is really important in understanding the deeper meanings of this. It's a white star in the saddle of the constellation Pegasus, which has a Mercury-Mars nature. And with Markab, legal matters, banishment, and exile are all accented. And Neptune, involved with this fixed star, shows abnormal thinking, secret enemies, and disappointments. I think it might have to do with Putin and his thoughts about Russia, and might be affecting him very strongly. Freud, Nikola Tesla, and Theodore Roosevelt all had their natal Neptunes within a conjunction with the fixed star Markab. And of course, those three heavyweights very much affected the world. And so I think that there may be births of children born now that we may not recognize for years that will have an impact on where humanity is going. The Sabian symbol, which related to the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, it reads an inhabited island. It suggests exclusivity. That's in degrees of the zodiac symbolized. And there is also, it's an interpretation of things that can't be described in words, a healer, or other keywords associated with this, this influence. So looking again to see where this degree falls in your own birth chart for a more personal message is really important. I've noticed a couple of people have had foot surgery and problems with their feet. People often call for astrology readings that relate to a favorable time to have a medical procedure done. And of course, I always say, obviously, I'm not a medical professional, but this is just a suggestion. We have to kind of cover our tracks that way. But one of the earliest uses of astrology had to do with medicine. And of course, the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, we think of healing, wellness, mental health, but Pisces is the feet. And so the care and well-being of the feet is something else that we might be able to think about or focus on in interpreting what this is going to mean through the year. I've done another set of sun sign readings for the Jupiter-Neptune stellium, this really powerful stellium that's affecting us all year, and how it might be affecting us all natally. Let's go back to the stop share. Oh, our friends over in Jacksonville vanished. Are you there? Are we still here? Well, I'll keep going. I think maybe they're hiding in the background. I hope they're not mad at me. See, I'm a Cancer. I have all this paranoia that people are mad all the time, and I hope they're not usually. Well, continuing, because I don't know what in the world happened, but it looks like we're still here. I can see my friend over on the west coast of Florida, George, and I don't know the other participants. It says there's only 2 of us here in the meeting. Well, they'll have to find their own way back in. I want to go over the sun sign predictions, the 12 houses of the zodiac for the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that's so significant right now. For everyone who's a Pisces, it falls in your first house. Anticipate a time of great self-improvement and growth. Your intuition is sharpening, and you can be at the center of some scandal and intrigue. Others can be confused as to who or what you really are. If you are in Aries, the influence is in your 12th house. And the 12th house is the secret side, the dark side of us all that no one ever really knows. We all have an active inner world, some of us more than others. Affirmations and meditations can be sources of inspiration and solace. Religious art and music, daydreams and fantasies. Taurus in the 11th house. New goals can appeal. Social contacts are in flux. Friendships can change your life. A long-cherished objective or goal comes into view and might be realized. With Gemini in the 10th house, there can be some deceptive situations affecting the career and illusions about your professional status. Cultivate opportunities for professional advancement involving travel, study, or publishing. Cancer in the 9th house. Let's see. There you are. We missed you. Are you back again? Hi. Could you hear and see me the whole time or not?
Just the last 3 minutes we've lost.
You lost? Oh, okay, because you had disappeared from here. I've been doing the 12 houses of the zodiac sun sign readings for the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, because I thought that was something that everybody could relate to, and it sets the tone for the whole year. And we are as far as Leo. Did you get that far?
You didn't get any of it.
You didn't get any of it? I'd be glad to go over it again.
All right, started Aries then.
You're just such sweet friends again, and I want us to all have a good night. I'm just glad you're back. Okay, in interpreting the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, the signature aspect of 2022, a good way to bring that to a personal level is to look to see in the sun signs or the rising sign which house in your own birth chart it affects. For the sign of Pisces, because that's the sign the conjunction is in, it's the first house. And anticipate a time of great self-improvement and growth. Your intuition is sharper. You can be at the center of some scandal and intrigue, and others can be confused as to who you really are, Pisces and Pisces rising. Aries and Aries rising, the 12th house is emphasized. Emotions can cloud perceptions. There can be contact with an institution, possibly visiting a friend in a hospital. Daydreams and fantasies, religious art, music, affirmations, and meditations can be sources of inspiration and solace. Taurus, the conjunction affects your 11th house, Taurus or Taurus rising. New goals can appeal. Your social contacts, your social circle is changing. You can say goodbye to old faces, hello to new ones. The same thing with the membership in clubs, groups, and organizations. Friendships can change your life. A long cherished objective or goal comes into view and might be realized. Gemini, the conjunctions affecting your 10th house. There can be some deceptive situations affecting your career, illusions about your professional status. Cultivate opportunities for profound advancement involving travel, study, or publishing. Cancer, it's the 9th house for you. Cancer or Cancer rising, travel, literature, and psychic experiences can be topics of special interest and inspiration. An in-law or grandchild can be hard to understand. Formal study can be rewarding. Faith and spiritual interests can introduce new states of awareness for Cancer or Cancer rising. Leo or Leo rising, it's your 8th house. And this can be really chaotic with finances. There can be the need to make some choices of one type or another. Insurance awards, maybe an inheritance or other unearned money can come along, maybe a lottery win. Past life studies or a near-death experience can have a profound effect if you are Leo or Leo rising. By the way, people often ask me when they come for readings whether they're going to win the lottery. There's something very seductive about the lottery. My standard answer is, because I don't believe in it, someone will win, but not you. That doesn't make me popular as an astrologer. However, I'll make an exception if the person's 8th or 5th house is strong. I haven't read for any huge lottery winners, but people that have won in one case cash for life, it sounds pretty good, but other larger prizes, they'll have a strong 5th or 8th house influence. So anybody whose 5th or 8th house is strong this year might win the lottery. I'll put a big might there because I still don't quite believe in it. But if you are if you're going to be having a strong Scorpio influence or a strong Leo influence, those would be the 5th of the 8th houses of the conjunction. Maybe you could at least buy a ticket. You know, like they say, you have to buy a ticket in order to win. Another lottery joke is someone praying and praying to win the lottery, but then a voice comes down from above, so buy your ticket already. I don't know if that's funny, but I thought it was when I first heard it. So if you are, if you're Scorpio or Leo, the 5th of the 8th houses. Maybe that's an extra little good thing you can look forward to in this volatile year. Virgo, the conjunction in Pisces affects the 7th house. A close partnership isn't totally above board or understood. You might be involved with someone and then discover, good or bad, that that person isn't who you thought they were. Questions of deception might have to be addressed. Try to settle any legal matters, Virgo or Virgo rising, through mediation, because you could get a bad surprise if something goes to court. And marriage or other close partnerships can become a major influence. Watch out for connecting with anyone who has a substance abuse problem or an obsession if you're Virgo rising or Virgo this year, Virgo sun sign. Scorpio, the 5th house. Aside from my silly comment about the lottery, the 5th house brings a mystery around a child or a loved one. A hobby or avocation could become a source of income this year if you're Scorpio or Scorpio rising. Activities with younger people can make a difference for the better. A gamble or other risk might be rewarding. Sagittarians, we're looking at the 4th house of Sagittarius rising. You might be living in a haunted house that could benefit from a space clearing and have to do rescue mediumship. I know a number of our listeners here at the Cosmic Church of Truth are mediums or in mediumship training. And if you are in that type of interest and you have a strong Sagittarius influence, your home might benefit from a space clearing, or you might want to go on a paranormal investigation. If you're involved in real estate, water issues can be important, flooding or plumbing. A new or larger home, a residential move, your family genealogy might bring some insights and surprises. You might find you had a horse thief in your family tree if you're fooling with that ancestry.com. By the way, be careful of that, everybody. Some of the people I do readings for have had some bad surprises with relatives that they didn't know they had turning up with ancestry. If you're Sagittarius, the 4th house, that's your genealogy. So, if you're going to do the ancestry thing, be careful. I'm afraid to do it myself. I don't quite know why, but at any rate, it's just that could be something interesting that this conjunction might bring up. Capricorns, it's the 3rd house for you. And with Pisces as your 3rd house, Capricorn or Capricorn rising, your thoughts can be a little scattered and dreamy. You don't know how you know something, but you will. A secret can surface involving your neighbors or a sibling or issues in the neighborhood. A program of study, as well as finding travel routes and arranging transportation, can be important if you're Capricorn or Capricorn rising. Finally, we've arrived at the end of this segment, and we are at Aquarius and the 2nd house. Good or not, your finances aren't quite as you think they are. Idealistic values impact your money matters. Charitable projects can appeal to you. Artistic skill and creative ventures can add to your income. Okay, that's kind of what I've prepared for you. And I thought we might go back to the screen share, keep our fingers crossed so that we don't lose each other. I don't think we will. And let's look at some of the transits and things tonight. And I know a number of you here are very good astrologers. And I thought we could maybe share some thoughts about what is coming up. Let's begin with the retrograde Mercury coming up. And I did have the dates written down here. And of course, they've disappeared. I don't know. Oh, here it is. Here's the Witch's Almanac. This is the little book that I do all of the astrology for. And I know that I have the right dates here for the retrograde Mercury coming up. Mercury is going retrograde May 10th through June 4th in 2022. And we have Pluto going retrograde in April 29th in Capricorn. So let's take a little bit of a look at what's going on here. The Mercury retrograde is something we'll all feel, and it'll be going retrograde here in Taurus. It'll move ahead to Gemini before it does. And it's going to be squaring the Jupiter and Neptune conjunction much of the time while it's in late Gemini, and then sextiling it later. Does anyone have any thoughts they'd like to suggest or discuss about the chart and the upcoming Mercury retrograde? How about how it'll affect money and transportation? Taurus, of course, is always financial, and Gemini relates a lot to transportation and the news media.
I was thinking you could show it on the full moon chart with maybe.
Yeah, we can look at I've got the full moon chart here too.
Maybe that has Mercury retrograde.
Let's see, there's the black, and it is retrograde by then. Yeah. Here is the May 16th chart, and Mercury will have gone retrograde then at 3 degrees of Gemini. It's a good idea. And it is in orb, out of sign orb of an opposition with the moon and retrograding around in Gemini. Do you think you can take everything at face value? Or do you think you should check to see if something sounds too good to be true?
I like the door number 2.
Door number, that's right. Yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of scams and a lot of people, because of the pressure in the world, talking through their hats, as the saying goes. Things may not be
clients
malicious.
that I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no,
clients that I have with that Mercury and Moon combinations, they're the greatest exaggerators in the world, you know.
Well, you know what? You're right. And I hadn't thought of the clients, but you're right. When someone has a Mercury Moon opposition or square, you've got to check. They may not even know they're exaggerating. I like to give them the benefit of the doubt. They probably do. Don't buy a used car under the aspect. Mercury's retrograde and it's opposing the moon, because this full moon eclipse is going to have an aftershock effect. Well, let's see. It's within orb of conjoining the sun in Taurus, and it's near the Pleiades, the fixed star Pleiades, which is an evil star.
Right.
It's right in the middle. Right
Algol.
Algol is there, you know, the other evil star. The earlier astrologers called it as they saw it. They'd call the stars evil. And, you know, we modern astrologers like to say it's a roadmap, it's energy. But, you know, the more I'm looking at Algol, yeah, the more I'm looking at it, I don't know if the original idea wasn't right after all, but we want to try to be a little more positive. So anyone else have thoughts about
one more thing, I'll quit.
Oh no,
the Mars Neptune conjunction is in harmony with the sun and the moon, so that might help.
That's right. A lot of people are doing ritual magic now, and that is the aspect of magic and witchcraft, the Mars Neptune. I like that. Share some other thoughts about that. Just what might happen.
I think that it's like the music and the arts, obviously, you know, you're connecting with the dance of life, you know, the music, arts, and drama. I'd say a lot of actors love Mars and Neptune, and and of course, mediums and psychics are, you know, it's like the veil is thinner, you know.
Yeah, that's a good thought to the other side. And then Pluto is also aspecting it well.
In harmony, perfect harmony. So that's all good.
That's that linking kite formation from sextile to sextile around, and the moon too. The moon is sextile Pluto, and
so those good aspects, and all those sextiles are like small steps instead of big steps, I guess.
The improvement. The sextiles, in a way, do you think they're more favorable than the trine or less?
I do. I think they're more powerful. The trine to me is the laziest aspect in the world. I mean, but a sextile is actually mentally stimulating, and to me, a sextile is more powerful than a trine.
It's sort of like you're getting a lucky break. And
I think so. And you put the sextiles to use. Where the trine, you're sitting back, fat and lazy, and smoking a big cigar or something, you know. And
Not all of us.
me neither. I don't like the stars, but yeah. But the
No,
sextile
actually,
seems to stimulate more.
no, that's actually a very good analogy. I like that idea with the sextile versus the trine, because we're really going to see that implemented here.
Players are challenging.
And the Scorpio moon is really emphasized here. If you look at how, if you consider that bucket pattern powerful, and look at how it's aspected. It is, it's opposing Uranus, a wide orb, but it still is. And of course, it's on the south node. The south node is going to be 22 Scorpio, because, you know, of course, it's across from the north node. What do you think of with this? This is a total eclipse, by the way, on May 16th. So it actually is stronger than the black moon, except for the mystical elements of the black moon. What do you think about the south node being near that that moon?
There's something to that. I think the past, and then the sextile Pluto, and so I'm thinking that it all relates to something from the past. You know,
Okay.
it's like the whole vibe sounds like something that you thought you had a handle on, but it comes back to kind of bite you in the, you know what, and
Heels, right? Anyway,
yes.
yeah, it does. Yeah, I think that, you know, that's sort of a good way. We have to be careful not to drown in emotions, everybody. Looking at this lunar eclipse on May 16th, I think it's going to be tremendously emotional because of all the water and then the south node on the moon. And emotion can be a mixed blessing. So, and many people are interested in past life regression lately. I've been having a lot of calls and interest in that. I do regressive hypnosis and also mediumship to past lives, two different ways of approaching a past life reading. And it comes in cycles. Sometimes I won't do one for months. And then sometimes that's all anyone's interested in. You know, this life looks like a washout. What was the next one going to the last one like? And so I think we could do a lot with karmic astrology and past lives with that, you know, that and that can be a good way to understand why we are who we are or have the aptitudes that we might have. Let's talk a little bit about Saturn, everyone. It's in its co-ruling sign in Aquarius. It's very strongly aspected. It's square the eclipse point. We have a fixed T-square here with Leo open. Oh, good grief. So the moon is square Saturn, and then Saturn is square the sun, and then there's the sun-moon opposition. Anyone with placements in the last decade of Leo, the fixed cross is there. And if you've done very much study in the theosophical astrology and in the different crucifixions we go through with the cardinal, the fixed, and the mutable cross. The fixed one, you're really stuck there. You know, there's like a crucifixion aspect. For everyone who doesn't have planets in the last decade of Leo, this is like a table with 3 legs ready to tip, and it tips toward the sign of Leo. And the houses involved would be the 7th and the 8th, or the general sign of Leo, because we can't do everybody's natal. Leo has to do with kings and rulerships. And also it has a lot to do with the entertainment world. And here in Orlando, the big scandal is about how dangerous some of the rides really are. You know, the little boy who was killed, if you've heard that story, because of something letting loose at the fun spot, and he fell off the great big whirligig thing and died. You know, that's been on the local news. But I think that there could be more things about dangerous extreme sports and dangerous leisure time activities, maybe even cruise ships. You know, that relates to the sun usually and going down into the Caribbean in this part of the world. but I think we have to be careful with leisure time activities, sports, and hobbies. So sports injuries and maybe scandals involving the sports of the entertainment world. There's so much money involved. I'm concerned about the Kentucky Derby again this year. We had, the horrible situation with the horse that won and then died from its workout. And I think that they're just going too extreme in the way they're working the horses, and that there may be scandals around the big three races, the Belmont and the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. That's supposed to be the hardest event to ever win in sports, to be a Triple Crown winner. And I think that's true. And I think that, there's a lot, you think of the gambling, and then you think of the entertainment and all of the fancy costumes, hats, and everything that go with the Derby and the horse racing industry. That is another thing that might be a part of that fixed T-square. And then the fixed cross, those of us born with Pluto and Leo, which I think might be most of us here tonight, will be feeling some of that. Pluto, of course, is far away and subtle. It might be a generational thing. I hope so. But you have to be aware if your natal Pluto is in Leo, within orb of this T-square. What good do you see with Saturn in Aquarius? It's a pivotal position here. Anyone have a positive thought there? Technology,
I was thinking more along let's see here. It's so depressing. The moon square Saturn people. Have you ever done charts for those people? It's like really a difficult challenge, in their lives. And
there's a lot of depression. Yeah.
But I would think that just the social aspect of it, and then Saturn being the apex there, it's almost a guarantee of there's friction, and obstacles, but it's almost a guarantee of eventual success with Saturn, I think, But Saturn and Aquarius in general, for the last couple of years, it's it's part of the experience of all, collective consciousness of humanity is like aware of things, more of an awareness, I think. It's so politically active, Aquarius, and so I'm just thinking it's like, it's Twitter and Facebook, and they're all coming and saying, "Hey, that's so powerful. We have to do something about, those type of things." And anyway,
that really all makes sense, Coleman. If you look at how Saturn is aspected, President Zelensky's an Aquarian, by the way. His natal.
Oh, wow.
So. Yeah, but I think you're right. And Elon Musk is a Cancer, and is affected, of course, him buying whatever it is he's bought, Instagram, 40
Twitter,
billion, whatever, or Twitter, I guess it is. I sort of stop at Facebook. I haven't gone into Twitter and Instagram yet.
I know it.
Out there. But at any rate, there may be with the Aquarius and its quincunx, Elon Musk's Cancer influence, which is fate. So there may be something with this, because it seems to be generating a lot of excitement that he's purchased Twitter, to control it if he can, if anyone can.
Well, the Aquarius symbol, the glyph, just looks like airwaves, and so I think that it's coming there. The Mark Zuckerbergs of Facebook and the Elon Musk, they're so powerful, that we're going to have to create laws, I think,
It can change the world in an instant, and it's just it's kind of like fire, it's It can be used positively or not, depending. But I just think it looks very significant in this
Sort of
aspect.
ominous looking at, that's for sure.
You know, ominous, it's a good word for it. You know, we want to always try to be as positive as we can, but I don't know, this just looks with the fixed T-square like it's going to be a very intense time in the world. What do you think about the space program, everybody?
Can I ask one more question?
Oh,
We had a question back here that.
Sure, absolutely. I'm encouraging everyone to share.
All right,
some
so
thoughts.
she, from the rear that she asked about, could you expound on Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and Saturn in Aquarius a little bit?
I wish I did. I don't have Zelensky's chart handy, but Saturn going over the sun in Aquarius indicates that this is they're calling him the new Winston Churchill, and he's doing the right thing. They offered him a ride out with his family to escape when things were really bad with the Russians, and they've all stayed there, you know, just like the royal family did during World War II. So I think that Saturn hanging in there, that Zelensky will prevail if anyone really is going to win in the Ukraine. You know, it just is so devastated. It'll take 400-year-old cities were blown up overnight. It's going to take a couple of generations for the country to recover, but that's Saturn. And I think the human interest, you know, trying to get humanitarian corridors to get people trapped out of danger, that's very much Saturn and Aquarius. Like you said, it's looking out for the people. But I think Zelensky will continue to be a hero. He's getting a lot of support from countries in NATO.
From us. I mean, I cry looking at him and his family, you know, just they're just so courageous.
It is. I mean, how many of us wouldn't have gotten on the helicopter to get out of there? I wouldn't want to have to have faced it. I don't know myself, but you know, he was adamant, we're staying here and we're holding on to our country. He's kind of like Ronald Reagan in an Aquarian actor that was playing president and then suddenly had to be the president. And, you know, it's just many people feel Reagan was such a great president. I can't make up my mind, but I know that many people who know more about politics than I do.
I'm anti-Ronnie.
You know, but
from one Aquarian about another one, I still feel
They're all the same.
I paid for president.
You had one president, you had them all.
oh dear, well, that's kind of interesting because there's Zelensky as the Aquarian and Reagan as the Aquarian. They remind me of each other.
So different though.
Yeah, and so different the times, different times in the world, you know, but just a very interesting kind of a thought. Just looking at the sun signs, the Aquarian leader there. Well, Putin, of course, is a Libra.
I've heard different stories about his birthday, you know, like different years now. There's some confusion, or maybe he's creating the confusion.
I don't think
the chart I did that I had up before was one from Lois Rodden, and it even had a time, you know, in the morning.
Right, yeah, I remember
maybe
that.
It's not right. It may not be, you know, and also the calendar in some parts of Russia, the Julian and Gregorian calendars are interchanged, and that would be like him to sort of change, although he was born in 1952. So most of the world had converted to the new style calendar by then. Well, let's look and see. There are the basic transits. There's a quincunx to the Libra sun from all the Pisces influence, if we look at it. So that's fate at work. And it may be fated what's going on with him. No. There is a miracle affirmation I brought along for tonight. This is really easy to memorize and it works really well. I think it came from Louise Hay originally, but if anyone wants to write it down or remember it, out of this situation, only good will come. All is well. I am safe. I've used this myself a number of times and have offered it to clients put it into their packets that I do for them with their readings as something to say. And I think with the transits going on now, that it's a good one, if you look at what we're dealing with, to remember. I like to tell a little story how I got out of a traffic ticket a while back. They pulled me over, and of course they were imagining things that I was speeding, but the blue lights were there, so I pulled over and I started chanting this, not until the officer was right at the window, but when I saw that I should either pull over or try to run for it. And I didn't think the Subaru had that much power in it. So I pulled over and I started chanting this. And then I stopped when he got to the window and they let me off with a warning. And this was a state trooper. So anyway, making that germane to everybody, this is a very good and very powerful affirmation. And I hate to be pessimistic, but we might be on the brink of World War III. We really might be. And if that's the case, memorize this. Just memorize it to keep chanting because it does seem to work. And there are the five stages of grief or betrayal with the planets. If anyone wanted, just in review, we're kind of toward the end of our meeting here. But the moon is denial, Mars is anger, bargaining to get through a hopeless situation, Mercury, Venus, depression when things hit, Saturn, and then acceptance, recovery, the dawn of a new day. And think of that also, the sun and Jupiter and acceptance. If you have to go through the 5 stages of grief in your own life, if we do have to go through World War III, which Nostradamus predicted and the book of Revelations and things predicted, this may be the extent of it, but if it's there, this is all geared to be information that I hope would help everybody, to get through whatever the times to come might be. Let's look at Beltane again. This is Walpurgis Nacht, St. Walpurga's night, and May Eve, the eve of May Day, and with the Mars-Neptune conjunction applying. It's a little apart, but it's moving in, which is a strong time. Mars is moving up toward the conjunction with Neptune. This is a good time to think of how to evoke your own inner magic. There is a thought that inner space is greater than outer space, and we all are lucky if we use 2 or 3% of our brain power, and Einstein might use 5%. If we can use a little bit more with affirmations and visualizations, April 30th, the black moon eclipse, the magical time to connect with spirit guides, the sixth sense, and higher forces. It's good to remember that on that evening. This is set up for Jacksonville. So, well, everybody, it's the witching hour, according to my little clock here. Time to party on at other places. Does anyone else have any closing thoughts or words? I appreciate you inviting me to come to do a program for you. And I tried. I hope everyone enjoyed the evening and got something enjoyable to think about and to work with the subject we all know and love, astrology.
Reverend Dr. Dikki-jo Mullen, astrologer, psychic, and parapsychologist. Dr. Mullen provides the following services: astrology, psychic, rune, and tarot card readings, face-to-face and Zoom readings and seances, and webinars and face-to-face presentations. Thank you for watching. Reverend Dr. Dikki-jo Mullen can be contacted at her skymaiden@juno.com email address. She also has a Facebook page, which she invites you to view, and her WordPress site, where she has additional resources.